Welcome, 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 everybody, to You Champion Yourself. Who are you? I am Chris Ferguson, your host. It has always been a dream of mine to showcase people who have taken their dreams and ideas and then turned it into their reality, their passion, their purpose. As they reach beyond their personal struggles, their pains, their traumas, so many people give up. They lose hope. There's a few who can walk through their obstacles and challenges, not knowing where it's going to take them. The thing that they do is they trust themselves enough not to give up, to do the follow through in their personal life, their career, and in relationships. And those are the people I say have championed themselves. Today we have my special guest is Jade Thrush. She's an amazing, amazing, energetic person. And I'm going to bring her on here and we're going to see. I want to know what she's been through. Let's talk. Hi, Jade. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm amazing. I've had a challenging moment, but I just kept putting out the energy and said, got the power back on just in time to do this. Yeah. So it's about being grounded and flexible.
Yes,
so
yes.
That's
especially since the virtual switch. Definitely flexible.
When you don't have any control over it too, it really makes it fun. But I wanted to talk to you today about a couple things. And in it, I want to talk about your life journey. What was it in your life journey that helped you realize that you have gifts, you have talents, you have abilities? And when did it start? And when did you start putting it in practice to help other people?
Well, everything in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, oh, yes. I was able to consciously and very abstractly, decide things as a very, very young little girl and choose, I would go along with the adults that were telling me to do something, even though I would have done the right thing anyway, but they gave me repercussions and I'm a rebel at heart. But I didn't want to hurt their feelings because that's what I cared more about. So then moving through life, I didn't know that was different though. I lived in 7 states. My mom was in the Army for 25 years. So with that upbringing, it was a lot of displacement, but a lot of amazing, incredible experiences. And I got to meet a lot of people and experience more life than any 28-year-old, I think, has any right experiencing. But along the way, I've always had things I was kind of good at, but I had a father just like myself, and we have these very intense emotions. And he didn't have such a blessed upbringing, so he often was scared of what I was. Very strong-willed, very dramatic. And, he didn't handle it so well. So for me, I just like a lot of people nowadays, I had my own fear conditioning, I guess you could say. And that kind of kept me in a box, kind of, at least the gifts. And for me, I rebelled in all the worst ways, which took me a long time. In fact, up until last year, when I actually got my first pause button. I would move from state to state. And for me, it was always, I love people more than anything. All I wanted to do is, how am I going to fit in this time? So whether I'm introvert or extrovert, I honestly have no idea.
You do know that you can be both, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. I just wanted to put that. So when someone says, I'm an introvert, well, we all are introverts at times.
Yes.
And, I'm an extrovert. Yeah, but I choose when I want to interact with people.
Yeah.
So we're all introvert extroverts. It's just by choice. And it's those choices that help us decide where we go. Yes. So in your in your life, my parents, my mother and father were both in the military.
Wow.
And so, I'm sorry?
What branch?
Army.
Let's see.
My dad was in the 101st Infantry and my mother was a WAC. But back then in those days, if a woman got pregnant, they were allowed to leave the army with an honorable discharge, but they weren't going to have pregnant women in the military. So that's what it was. So times have changed. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm ancient. I'm ancient, but the
No.
fact is that it's okay. But in your moving, did it sometimes feel tough as a kid because you're starting over again? And a lot of kids have a, it's an unsettling, insecure feeling not to be able to have a foundation to stand on. How did you work through that?
That's the interesting thing about my the adversity that I faced in my life. I think that things were so tumultuous in the context of where I was. I had very odd circumstances. I lived in Arizona for 10 years. That's where I was born. That was the longest residence I ever held. And so moving from there, that was hard, but it was an adventure. I was always very curious. So I don't remember it. I don't remember that being hard. I remember living in Louisiana being very hard. That was my mom's first deployment. So, but before that, I mean, my mom, she joined the military when she was pregnant with my brother. He's 2 years older than I am. And then she was pregnant with me, and she would run with me up until 9 months doing PT. She was a drill sergeant.
Mm.
So I was born right into the Army.
It is being born into the Army.
Literally.
You have no choice as a child. You have no choice. So I get that. I get that. We have a lot of similarities. We were talking before we started the interview. We have a lot of similarities. And you said, I can inspire even the loneliest and most emotionally neglected to love what makes them unique. And what did you mean by that statement?
You know, my spirituality, the message that I think became very clear to me last year, the thing that I am here to teach or to show or to lead by example, the most important lesson is unconditional self-love and unconditional self-acceptance. Because I was very lonely for a long time, starting very young. And that's because I never really identified much with my family or anybody else. And girls never really liked me very much, even if they pick up on nonverbal communication, far sooner than boys do. But I always had close friends, just never in groups. And so I don't believe I ever disliked myself or didn't love myself. And I didn't learn until about 4 years ago how to say, I love who I am. Sometimes I just hate who I am in this society.
But okay, this is the one thing that I learned a long time ago. I have never fitted in any category. I don't believe in labels. I don't believe in judging. I don't make assumptions. I am me.
Mm-hmm.
And if people get me, they get me. If they don't get me, they don't get me. Not my issue. That's something within them. And so I'm so glad that you said that, because so many people don't understand that. So many people just think that it's like, oh, well, I've got to change me. I've got to change me. And it's not about changing ourselves. It's about standing in our power and getting to be authentic with ourselves. And in that authenticity, it'll take you so far. So I'm so glad I asked that question of you. And in your rich 28 years, I so love that, because it showed your confidence and it showed where you stood in your power.
Okay. I have to make jokes about it sometimes, because there are, it's always the sayings, and I'm like, listen, Karen, it has been a very, like, the age does not dictate my experience. And I'm like, I promise you, and I don't mean it in any sense other than, please, like I said, I want to inspire people, because desperation is a gift sometimes.
It is. It absolutely is a gift. And one of the things that I learned on in life, that it was about saving myself first, because if I didn't save me, there was nobody else that was going to do it.
Exactly.
And if I didn't, I hated life because of my circumstances. I was angry. I was so angry, I became non-auditorial. I think at one point, most people thought I was either deaf or dumb, and they couldn't figure out one, because I wouldn't respond to their questions and I wouldn't respond verbally. But I'm very, very intelligent. And so it was just so much anger in me that I had to work through, and it took years. It took years. So with all your moving around, I actually was curious what high school you went to in Fairfax County, Virginia, because I have family, my husband's side of the family lives in Fairfax, and they went to school in Fairfax.
It's a good district. I went to Robinson.
I'm trying to remember where they went.
That's in Burke,
Okay,
Robinson.
they lived in Chandler. Is it
So
Chandler?
South County, maybe?
I don't know. It could be. So I was just curious about that. And what made you want to graduate early from high school?
Well, at this point in time, I had already decided. I came to the realization that the social group, the popular group, I was no, I always float. I float on the outside and kind of know a little. I know everyone, so universally known, but yet so lonely. And I understood one thing for certain, and that was that those people didn't know me whatsoever, and I didn't know them, and they didn't seem to really know each other much either. And
Yeah.
if that worked for them, that was great. I had nothing against anybody. I got a letter. It basically proposed this program for early graduates, and I was just like, oh, yeah, sounds cool. I would rather go to college because there's a lot more freedom. I can kind of do whatever I want. Like I said, I was rebellious, very strong-willed, so the thought of that was great.
Okay. Because the thing was, is I didn't know, but see, when kids usually, I've worked 21 years of a 40-year career with children and troubled children.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is usually when a kid wants to graduate earlier, they want to get into trouble, not go to college.
Oh, I definitely did.
So, but that's the whole purpose for asking the question, because it's like, okay,
Yes.
I get it being in trouble, but at a college level, it's a whole different maturity level.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Not
make one thing
necessarily
very
mature, but it's a maturity level.
No, I'm gonna clarify one thing for everybody. Starting very young, like this, as soon as someone offered me some fun, I was like, "Yep, let's go." I didn't need peer pressure. I was excited to try anything and everything, but school was my first known. That's where I had found autonomy. That's where I found relatedness, and that's where I found competence for the first time ever. And that's where I got away from my family's dysfunction and the chaos. So I loved school. I was a little apple polisher, but I sure as hell cheated on a spelling test in second grade because I walked in and I was miffed that I had a spelling test. I completely forgot, and I didn't think that was very fair justice. So I found a way out, and I went home and I studied the words. But when I went to college, you are 100% correct, because I was that kid too. No one would have ever seen on the outside, but I was partying, I was sneaking out, I was doing all that stuff, with boys. But I was doing everything because I wanted to keep my power.
I found that when I was young, that it wasn't about taking risks, because I had had so many things happen to me in life. I wasn't a risk taker, but I was that silent observer. And I see you being that silent observer now also. I want to celebrate you and your completion of nursing school,
Thank you.
because people don't celebrate their accomplishments enough. They don't realize that these little check marks on these little lists that we have in our subconscious, that, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this. Yes, I accomplished these goals. That's what empowers a person's spirit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to celebrate. I wanted to let my audience know how awesome it feels for an individual to complete a task like this and take that next step to their authenticity, their passion, their purpose, being able to help. And I love the fact that you signed up with the Holistic Nursing Association, because of the fact I'm completely holistic.
Yeah.
I'm not about doctors treating symptoms.
No, you treat the patient that has
You
the
want to
disease.
treat the patient, and you want to treat the issues, because a lot of issues in people's bodies um, have to do with their emotional state, and has to do with their thought process and how they feel. And when you have negative thoughts, people don't realize how bad negative thoughts are when they have them towards themselves.
I think, therefore I am.
Yes, if they can get to that. But many of them don't, and that's what tears down their organs, their internal systems, hearts,
Yeah.
liver, all of that. So I wanted to celebrate you for your accomplishment in
Thank
nursing
you.
school.
Honestly,
And
it's hard. It is hard. You really do. They make sure that you're ready for a lot of tasking.
they do. I want to talk to you about you about your resilience in life.
Mm-hmm. Resilience, yes, that's one of my favorite topics. because I believe that there's resilience and then there's grit. Because the resilience, I think I never had a choice. It started when I was really young, when my mom first left and I saw the chaos that I was doomed to. I was like, I'm here for a good time. I decided, okay, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And then my mom, she was wonderful. She would give me these little nuggets of wisdom. Just like when I found out Santa Claus wasn't,
Really?
what I thought. Yeah, I was like, what a sham. No, this is terrible. And she said, Jade Marie, whatever you believe in, as long as you truly believe in it, it is real.
Absolutely.
So I kept believing things would be better.
Well, the fact is, as you were saying that, I kind of laugh because I teach people on mindset. And it's all about flipping the coin. If you always think that you're getting everything that happens, if your first thought is like, oh man, here we go again, that's that negative mindset. Mm-hmm. Or if somebody says, well, that's interesting, but that's the disconnect word. So they've already told themselves they're not going to do or take or put any action for the next step, is that word BUT. And when you start thinking like, okay, a lot of people think, well, this isn't going to go right. This isn't going to go right. But when you start saying, yeah, what if this goes right? How about that thought? Let's think about that possibility.
Yeah.
Wow, this could be the best thing in my life. Wow, this just might happen. You're not putting expectations out there, but you're envisioning it at its ending. And that's how you work back to completion.
And honestly, and I was guilty of that negative mindset a lot. I think I fluctuate sometimes, but you are 100% correct that once you choose that mindset, all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm so grateful. This is beautiful. In the middle of like chaos, you're just like, this is so beautiful.
But it's then taking the action after the chaos is done and going forward, putting that first step first. That's the completion. So anyway, but adversity, how does that impact your life?
I was hoping that one day I never want fame. I don't really care about, wealth or power, anything of the sort, influence or making a difference and impact. That's what matters to me. And my mom was her integrity and her selfless service, despite how hard it could have been. That was the first lesson I learned. So adversity has never not been a part of my life in a way that I hope I can share with so many people, because, and this is only in the most loving way, because anyone, and I'm sure you know this, anyone who truly knows the feeling of suffering to its core would never want anybody else to feel that way ever. They could prevent it. And so many people prevent their happiness because they're fearful of things that are very scary. The world's scary. I'm terrified of the things that are outside of my normal adversity.
Make them adventurous and find out that it'll all turn more into your favor, because the thing is when you fear, you're actually drawing that to you.
Exactly.
So when you see it uncertain, that's what most people are afraid of, is the uncertainty. Instead of standing in their power and saying, no, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but when I get there, I'll deal with it. Exactly. I can't change the future. I can just stay in the present moment. And as you do that, it empowers you. It empowers you even more than you've ever understood it. And you can do, the thing is with my issues and all the things I went through, the attitude I took is, what? You're saying I can't do that? Watch me. Let me show you. It does.
It starts giving you a big head though sometimes, right? I'm like, what can't that handle? No.
Well, it's not an ego. I'm just going to put the actions into play, and I'm going to show you. Prime example, when I came to Tennessee, I had to get certified in law enforcement here.
Yeah.
But I was 60 years old. They have what they call the bridge bill here, so that you have some adversity.
Did you face any of the age discrimination?
No, it had nothing to do with that. I sponsored myself in the academy. I did 12 weeks. I outran 20-year-olds. I outran 30-year-olds. I was the oldest one in the class. But the fact is I graduated after 12 weeks, and I felt accomplished because, again, don't try to tell me I can't do something or your age is a limit. I have 2-year-old boundaries. It's yes or no. There's no such thing in my world as maybe. And I have no limits. I've never embraced that idea of, there's a box that's limiting your thinking. No, that's you limiting your thinking. There's never been a box, and I've never limited myself that way, because in my life, when you literally lose hope, you're at the bottom of the barrel. There's nowhere else to go but up. There's nowhere
Exactly.
else. So
Well,
the fact
yep.
is, I can either empower it and embrace it. So you know
Yes.
what? There was a lot of times in my life I was ashamed of where I came from
Mhm.
and what I went through, and I didn't want anybody to know. And the whole time that I went through those 21 years dealing with those troubled youth, none of them knew my background. After I retired, and now there's some of them on my page and like, oh, Fergie, you went through that? You went through that? They'll message me, and I was like, yeah, unfortunately I did, but this is how I could be of service to you in my
Mhm.
capacity to help, so you wouldn't punt so much.
Yeah. You bring up such an interesting point, something that I try to advocate. This is another reason, my purpose, being in nursing school. And this is nothing about, a lot of people don't understand certain things unless you understand it. So for me, before I went into nursing school, I worked in behavioral health, and I worked in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. That was the first time I felt, I guess you could call it imposter syndrome.
Uh-huh.
But they're like, Jade, you're so good with the patients. I was like, that's because I'm one of them.
I don't know that I think people put too much into that imposter syndrome, actually,
I agree.
instead of truly understanding that, you know what, as long as you're authentic about it, how can you be an imposter?
See, now I know that.
Okay, good.
I was just fresh out of school, and I was like, I better keep quiet. They're going to know. But I see now that it's just like you said with those troubled youth, it's having that lived experience and that firsthand understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That's what bridges that gap, because we can all be there easily. And it doesn't change the way somebody is. And the judgment that we hold based on the things that we're socialized, the context that we're raised in for safety, sometimes can be the worst thing for us. It causes us to judge people that have had no other option in their eyes, in their reality.
Right. Well, the thing is it is that programming that parents do, that you have to go through these rules, you have to do all this understanding, you have to go through cultures, you have to go through the programming of traditions for whatever culture you are, or your family lineage. And you're just like, okay, and now you want me to just forget it all? What the world is going on? As you start questioning things. And then those family secrets.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, what do you mean we're not Irish? What are you telling me here?
What are we? Am I adopted?
Exactly. Sometimes, it's like, maybe I should have been adopted. I'm not sure.
Literally. My therapist told me the irony. She was like, this is going to sound crazy, Jade. I was like, really? She's like, sometimes it's like, it's almost like you're from a different planet, but you're not. It's just, I think like you said, you're here for humans. I'm human, and we're here for humans.
If everybody saw each other as beings instead of color, instead of philosophies, instead of opinions, could you imagine how much this world could change?
Diversity should be cherished.
But I don't see any race more empowered than another. I think it's just because of the people in power.
Yeah.
But people like where they're at, and the people where they're at are trying to figure it out and wanting to blame each other when it actually was beyond their control.
And I think that so many people, in the very oddest of ways, they almost feel a sense of powerlessness. And that's like, know thyself. That's where the empowerment comes. And that's where like people like you and I, people that want to speak and they want to show these people, inspire them. The only reason that power has any hold or any influence over anybody is because people don't realize how strong they are. They don't realize what their voice can do. They don't realize how capable. And that's why, working with my peers one-on-one, no matter what the extent, just finding that thing about someone that makes them so incredible, and then telling them if they don't already believe it in themselves. And, just tell them, you got to do work. Like my mom said, you always do. Things don't come easy, but if you're a fish, you don't have to climb a tree, and you're incredible.
Absolutely. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
But in here, you said, um, medicine and healing. You love to do both of those. And you said, and I want to read the sentence so that it's in context. You said,
Yeah.
I see what others do not, and also connect with patients in such a beautiful, mutual, and transcendent way. Can you talk about the transcendent ways that you connect with your patients this way?
Absolutely. Honestly, it was news to me because I didn't, in such a fast-paced healthcare system and so many patients, I think people, nurses at large, they deserve to enjoy their jobs. Physicians deserve to enjoy their jobs. They have so many things to do that are absolutely important, but it's like, at what point do you say, maybe that won't take as long if I know my patient? Like, it's just taking a leap of faith. But all I know is that connecting with them, the magic that you experience when you just make somebody feel safe and loved and heard.
Exactly. I love the way you said that, because it is about, well, I believe doctors, because of the medical field, treat the symptoms because of the industry that governs them, doesn't allow them to do other things.
It's been
It's
insidiously poisoning for a long time.
yeah. And so I think the more holistic way is the way that whenever I look to choose a doctor, that's who I look for, is somebody that's in holistic, that's not going to shove pills
Yeah.
down my throat saying, oh, well, here, take this pill so you don't feel that pain. No,
Mhm.
I want to find out why that pain's happening.
You know, and I try to even catch my, because I get a little mad and sometimes my mouth ain't, it doesn't match my heart sometimes. But what the most important thing I have to try to remember too is, like, with physicians, I've done a lot of thinking. I love philosophy. I like thinking about old wise quotes and things like that. But they're doing what they think that they have to. It's just, for so long, this problem has grown insidiously and beyond anyone's like conscious awareness. So now we're at a point where, there's people suffering for, honestly, reasons that probably don't have to, and it's perpetuated on both sides. And just like I believe Martin Luther King said, the ills that society will inflict are nothing compared to the ills that we inflict on our souls when we look the other way. The physician and nurse suicide and burnout, that's it. They're victims too. They're victims of a very insidious system. And whether or not, it is supply and demand in the healthcare system, just like any other institution. We are an economy and it works as such, but we have done a bad job as a people at telling people and making them, like I said, validating them on such a deeply intrinsic level, and making sure that they know the priority isn't always, building the career you might not love and like getting everything and having your home, because later on, what's a midlife crisis?
It's regret. It is
Yeah.
absolutely regret. Yes.
And they often lose everything. They work so, I'm like, that kind of discipline I envy. I envy it. But at the same time, it took discipline to fight it too.
And I get that. Just any kind of first responders of any kind have, just with COVID, has had such most challenging times.
Yes.
And then with the election and defunding this and doing that and doing this, burning cities down, I promise you, as long as there's hate and people get offended by the simplest things, they need to go within and find out.
They do. And it's, honestly, we just have to learn. We should have a master class for everybody in the US who's willing to listen and wants things to be better, to just let them know there is a difference. There's loving unconditionally and holding people accountable. It's so important.
Absolutely. But see, here's the thing is and in teaching on unconditional love, I was a correctional officer in a men's prison.
Oh, wow.
Way back when in my law enforcement career. And I was in it in the 80s. So there wasn't many women out there. So of course I had to be there to see men's penises. That was just, the label that they gave. And it's like, I could care less.
Yeah.
But the fact is that there's some really bad people out there. A guy came up to me while I was working at control housing and said, oh, well, I just want to tell you my story. And I was like, oh, really? What's that? And he says, yeah, I shouldn't be in here because I don't remember molesting those four-year-olds. And I looked at him and I became so angry. And I said, listen, he says, well, I had an epileptic seizure. And I said, excuse me, the last thing that's going to be engaged in an epileptic seizure is your penis. It's not going to work because you're not going to, in an epileptic seizure, you're not going to be able to have that. And you're not going to be able to physically restrain a child and threaten a child and assault them. And I said, get the blah, 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 away from me. And he never spoke to me again. And it was one of those things. He was challenging.
No one held him accountable.
He was challenging my boundaries. And I just lay back into it because there was only 4 females working in the prison at the time. And we had trustees, medium, and maximum. We had death row there.
Wow.
And so it was really challenging. But the fact is it wasn't that I was a female that it was challenging. It was challenging because of the 65% of the facility were sex offenders.
Yeah.
And so when you deal with people's that are minds that are twisted, and they only see what they can steal from the innocents, and they don't care who the innocence is. So it's one of those things. So your boundaries get checked every day, wherever you work, as a healthcare provider, as law enforcement, as a firefighter, an ambulance driver.
You know, I think that's why I think that's my gift. I think my gift is to interact with people that I think I have an innocence about me that I carry with me no matter what. But that's a choice because I've seen evil in its face. And it's unfortunate that you're right. It is awful that I was told by one of my therapists, and thank goodness for it. I'm so sorry, Jade, for everything that you've gone through, everything that happened to you. You never deserved that, but now it's your responsibility.
It is. Absolutely is.
Yeah, you can't inflict that hate on other people. We're adults here. And so you're right about holding that person accountable. I'm wondering when we're, as a whole, as a group, population, even a nation, are we going to start holding the ones that are inflicting that pain or causing that? People are forced to stay in silence with their demons, and those demons take over.
Well, a lot of times those demons are self-imposed because of their mindset and what they choose to do. It's a choice.
Absolutely. Everything is a choice.
You can come from nothing, and I mean nothing, and make something out of yourself. You can become a college graduate. You can help people, but there's a difference. I guess this is my question. How do you see the difference between sympathetic and empathetic with people?
I don't think I can see it. I think something in my heart feels. There isn't, and for me, it's more so. I know my boundaries deeply, and they're different than others. Way different. And I always joke with people. I'm like, if I've stayed in a situation far longer than most would, now I look back and I'm like, I was doing research. Like I have that's my outlook in life, because like you were talking about trauma before, I almost hate that word right now. It's just the stigma that goes along with it and the assumptions that I have something I need to still work through. And I'm like, reality to me was trauma all the time.
Right.
But that didn't mean it was trauma because I chose.
Right. But here's the thing is and this is my understanding of sympathy versus empathy. Sympathy is when you take on that person's flight and you're going to do everything and show them the way and do the steps. And 9 times out of 10, you get blamed when it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to go, because that wasn't their idea. It was your idea, and they didn't get engaged.
Yeah.
Where empathy is, I find myself saying to people, that's terrible. I'm so sorry you've been through that. What are you going to do? What are you going to do at that moment opens the mind of their minds to think about, oh, you mean I have options?
Yeah. Even just imploring you when you want to know more, just caring enough. I think from empathy, I feel things with people on a level that, there's some experiences I've never had to get into my car and fear for my life because of the color of my skin. I don't think I'll ever have to fear for such a thing. But at the same time, I feared for my life in other ways. So I pick from whatever the repertoire of feelings that I do know. I'm very good with identifying emotion. And whatever somebody is feeling at that moment, I don't take it on. I leave it where it's at, but I can contextualize with what I have been in order to make sure I can respond to them appropriately. But I always have to ask, you don't know what do you need support? Do you need a shoulder? Because I want to start talking. And we don't know, some people aren't. I've seen people work through things completely different, and I'm like, I don't even know.
I agree. I don't think that it's a skin color for you. That's why you don't fear being hurt. I think it's a mindset that you have. I don't think you put yourself in those kind of risky situations where it's going to cause you to become a victim.
No.
And a
And
lot of people do.
interestingly enough, too, about skin color, I lived in Savannah, Georgia when I was in middle school. I was minority there. I had the greatest time of my life.
I worked at an alternative high school that was
Yeah,
78% Black. And it was the toughest job I had to do, but it was the most rewarding. I have made such relationships with these kids that I've maintained the relationships as they became adults, and they hooked up with me in Facebook. And I still get kids today calling me, hey, do you think I can do this? Because I did this when I was a kid. It's like, absolutely. People understand that as a kid, you're trying to figure it out. That's why the laws are the way they are. They want the court systems, the society wants to give you that chance to make different choices. But at 18, we have to draw the line in the sand somewhere and say, okay, at this point, you're accountable for what you do. Unless as a juvenile, you do so much stuff as a juvenile, you finally hit a point in the court say, no, you're not even making an effort to change. We're going to adjudicate you as an adult. So that's where that divine difference is.
And that's where we have to look, because people move that line all over the place. And I'm like,
I don't think it exists anymore.
Yeah, all I know is that you can look at somebody in the eyes and you can ask them a real hard question. And I'm telling you, if I did that, if somebody wants to change or not. And it's a sad, sad acceptance of what might become of that. But I believe that that's a small, small percentage of people to just choose that if they actually look down the barrel of life and they chose. People that know the immensity of life and the gift of life, as you know very well, it's not so like you'll suffer until you're at the bottom of the barrel, like you said. And it's what else is I always joke with people. I'm like, I will live just despite the adversity. I'll never give up. I'll die trying.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with that. That is one of my philosophies in life, and my core is that I can do anything. Yeah. No matter what you say, no matter what you try to convince me of, I can do anything. So I absolutely love that.
My mom told me the same thing when I was little, and apparently I had a math disability. I didn't know until I was 28 years old. Let me tell you something, though. I definitely, trauma was when we did multiplication tables in middle school, and I was like, what is going on? How are you doing that? I don't know how I did it. I just knew my mom said if I worked hard enough.
Well, see, I had just a different thing. In middle school, I was doing algebra 1 and 2. So when I went to high school, because I grew up in an orphanage, they put me in a general math class. That's like, I felt like that was like a slap in the face. I really loved math. I really got it. I really wanted to work through it. And I went to the counselor and I said, I was doing algebra 1 and algebra 2. Why are you putting me in a general math class? She goes, well, we didn't have a class to put you in. If you have any problems, have your parents come up and speak to me. And I looked at her and I said, bitch, I live in an orphanage. There ain't nobody that's going to come talk to you.
Honestly, you and I need to tell people about, there's a type of inequity that happens that's like the most rare of things. And you're just like, listen, lady, I'm coming in here.
Yeah. And so the thing is the next thing I did is I went to the math teacher and I said, give me your final. He goes, what? I said, give me your year final. And I said, look at my math. I said, I was doing algebra 2 in the 9th grade, and you now want me to do general math. Give me your final test. Wow. And so he did. I had 100 questions done in 25 minutes. I got 100 on the test. I looked him in the eye and said, don't ever expect me back here in my class. And if you give me less than an A, I'll meet you in the parking lot.
Oh, right. Okay.
Catch
me outside.
The only thing I had was education to get me out of where I was.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I have. And that's what I preach to children. You have to have an education. It is so competitive nowadays that you have to.
Exactly. And that's one of those, my mom said, first 2 lessons she taught me very young. And it's funny too. The first one was, life isn't fair, Jade. Life isn't fair. And that's funny because I fought for fairness. I'm like, I'll be damned if it isn't. But the second one was that you have to play the game to some extent. Because then, as long as you develop intrinsic morals and values, playing the game is something people have to learn to take with a grain of salt. because I had to learn that I just because there is hypocrisy left and right, especially if you have a lens quite like mine. We all do hypocritical things, or we all don't practice in context what we preach. But I've experienced some of the most blatant hypocrisy that I'm just like, I had to play the game to get to where I was until I quit playing the game, because it was the implications of doing so would have been too much. But too often we just we perpetuate cycles of that, you know?
Well, the thing is I think for some people, they've had so many traumas or injustices that have happened, they don't play a game. They're hardcore. They don't play a game. They stand in their power. And if that means I don't do that anymore, I don't do that anymore. If that means I go and become successful in that, then that's where I should be at. And so they don't play the games, because the fact is I think, especially for me, one of my biggest things is the hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I won't kowtow to the hypocrisy.
No.
I won't play the game with them. It's not worth my time or energy to get sucked down in that tube and fight to get out of the sewer of it.
Yep.
And so
Honestly.
there are a lot of people waking up and saying, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm stopping here. I'm going to stand in my power and do me. And what's mine is going to come to me, because the universe says it will.
See, I've got the last year, I've experienced more blatant hypocrisy, and honestly, that's where I was like, I'm going to stand my ground. But I also know that a lot of it's beyond. I do a bad job sometimes at how I well, that's a lie. Sometimes, you know, we respond to the way our bodies respond. Our bodies remember what we've been through. And unfortunately, a lot happened last year. And for me, in my opinion, looking back, I'm like, God, I carry it well.
I think everybody was put in a position
Yeah.
that it just took their knees out from underneath them.
It did.
And unfortunately, most people don't know that coronavirus has been around since World War I. And if you're a military kid or military buff, I love military movies. Most people don't know that about me. But they used coronavirus in mustard gas. That was one of the agents, so the mustard gas would work better. So it was man-made back in World War I. All they've ever done since then is mutated.
Yep.
And so the thing is SARS is a mutated of coronavirus. And
not.
that was man-made. And
the
thing is if it's man-made by our laws in this country, it's chemical warfare. And you can't patent it.
But you know what's sad? Amid all of this chemical warfare, and trust me, I'm terrified that we're all going to get nuked one day. I'm like, oh, I'm so scared. Like, you know, till you don't know. And that's just it's irrational fear to even put any kind of worry into, but that's just it. We're worrying about this thing that's happening. We went through it, and yes, it's real, and there's people dying, but that happens every day. People die every day. There's sad things happening, but I know since I was little, I was always told, lack of sleep and stress, maybe loneliness, those will kill you sooner than anything.
Sure. Well, the thing is there from 2018 to 2019, I did the research when this all came out, because I'm like, something's not right here.
We're going to have another talk another time for sure.
Something's not right here. And from 2018 to 2019, we had 62,000 people die of the flu, but that number has never been posted anywhere. But if you go to the CDC, National Institute of Health, you saw those numbers. But in October of 19, and it had to have been October, end of September, October, when you look at the timeline, that people were exposed. And I'm hearing things like there was a safety violation in the Wuhan lab, and 3 employees left the lab infected and went to the hospital, and that's where it started from. Intentional, unintentional, I don't know. I don't care. But it was the fact that they were doing this gain of functioning of getting diseases from animals to be contracted by humans, because a lot of them don't. I have
the human to animal vector is very
they're way different. It's just like, they want to give women horse hormones, and they don't interact. They're not going to interact. Your body's not going to interact with that. So the fact is that that gain of function. And then now with everything coming out in the news, it's like people are angry. People have lost so much, their businesses, family members, friends, to all of this. And you want us to sit back and do what? So I agree. And because,
you know, when I did work in the psych hospital, we learned about verbal de-escalation. And I'm watching this because anyone who's been through hell and back, we watch this now and I'm like,
yeah,
what's happening? First time? And it's sad because I'm like, anybody, I've made global connections because I was so blessed in this past semester where I was, sitting around. So I made some lemonade and I got to speak at these 2 global conferences. And I got to basically connect with, I was asked to moderate them. I didn't know why. I asked my mom if I was the only boob that would take on the extra work. I didn't understand. And it's like, why me? And even when they approached me, I was like, you guys know I don't have, it's like, I'm not a doctor. I just like, I have 2 bachelors. That's it. I'm a nobody. Because I'm used to the, the red tape for credentials.
Right.
After being asked a second time to moderate, I asked, may I ask why? She said, I'm not sure. It's almost as, in my communications with you, it's almost as if I know you. I was like, people should know this. It's not just, that's not a like, woo, good Jade. We should be talking to one another authentically.
Yes.
And we learn verbal de-escalation because people in chaos, people in panic, right? In crisis. If you're going to work in mental health, you have to have a very, very solid understanding of yourself and anything that might test you or trigger you. Because the moment that somebody else is in that state of crisis, their limbic system is basically dysfunctional. It literally talks about, and it calls it in this description, lizard. I know that is used in a lot of circles right now. I don't really like, but they're in fight or flight. Fight, flight, food, water, reproduction. There's no compassion. There's no logic.
No.
And then if the professional isn't in some state of knowing, or you can still go through crisis and not be in crisis.
Yes, you can.
There's a difference. Yeah, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, I won't know it again. I know in a brief second I'm in crisis. I don't think straight. And I know people anger me sometimes, but I'm honest enough with myself. I think these are the truths we should say more often. I can say about, I remember watching a comedian one time talking about parents with their children, that every parent has at some point in time. And if they deny it, something's wrong with them, that they've wanted to kill their children for sure.
Yes, I have to admit, my daughter was a street angel and a house demon, and her teachers loved her. She was the captain of the swim team in her high school years. She was this, she was that. I made her all these outfits for drama. She was in drama, and she came home, and the first time she told her dad, "F you," I went berserk. I was like, "What?
You should talk to my mom."
What?
She's reverse psychology on me. I was attitude. I feel bad. I'm gonna apologize to you. I'm sorry, because I was a daughter like that, and I had something to prove. Until my mom had enough when I was in high school, and she literally, because I was just yelling at her, just taking out all my rage on my mom. Love her to death. I literally cry sometimes. I wake up, I'm like, oh, my mom, I'm sorry. But she literally she looked at me. She said, all right then, little girl, if you're so tough, take your best hit. And I just crumbled. I was like, what? But you're my mom. She called my bluff.
I love her thinking, because when she did that, when I was working gangs on the streets in Miami-Dade and Broward County, I was bench pressing 200 pounds.
Wow. You are.
I had no doubt. I was.
You're badass. You're badass.
I knew in my life that if I was going to help people, I had to be able to stand my ground. And there was this one gang fight down in Miami that I remember. It's like it just happened yesterday. And I told this guy, I said, listen, you got to stop fighting. He goes, oh, bitch, what are you doing? Da, da, da. You know how gang members are. They start cussing. Yeah. I said, dude, I'm only going to tell you once. What you going to do? What you going to do? I took him down, put him on the ground. And then all of his homies are like, ooh, a bitch took you down, a bitch took you down. Right. And I laughed because I said, you know what? You don't know people. You don't know who they are.
No, you don't know what they came from.
Absolutely.
And even if you don't have the muscle behind you, I tell people all the time, I was working out really well, and I fell off because I had too much going on, and I'm a motivated by other people kind of person. I don't care if I'm skin and bones. I have more grit inside of me that I will literally, I'm not going to say something politically incorrect right now, but I will Hulk out. I will Hulk out. And we should empower people like that. That's that fear. That's what drives those monsters too.
But it was the idea that I was a female and being labeled as weak.
Of course. And your position too.
So I was like, you know what? I'm going to explain it to you, but I'm not your mom. And I told him, I said, I'm not your mom. I don't have to repeat this to you. And then that was just like, oh, it was just hysterical. So then when I went to work at the high school, I was a security specialist, and I had to go. My job was to break up the fights, and there would be 10 or 12 people fighting. I'd be the first one jumping in there, and the kids would see me like, oh my God, look at her. She picked him up and moved him. 200-pound kid, doesn't matter. My adrenaline's flowing just as much as theirs.
Yup.
And so the fact so I agree. But the bottom line is that no matter who you are, no matter what you are, it is about helping people, but they have to help themselves too.
Yes.
I can only guide you. I can't do the work for you. That's not what this life is about.
I have a little bit of a different approach. Sometimes I think I got to splash some water in their face, that you can lead them to the water, but you can't make them drink it. Unfortunately, I think we've gone so far in our system, the way it's been, either they don't trust who's leading them to the water, they've never had water before, or they don't know what's in the water. So I think that sometimes you got to really okay, listen, drink some, see, it's okay. All right. Now you choose. No. Okay. You walk away. You can't fix it for them. But
the thing is I don't even do that because one of the most human desires, the things that you need in your life, the first thing you need is water.
Of course.
Because as long as you stay hydrated, your organs and everything are going to keep working. Your body's going to keep flowing. And if you don't know that you're thirsty and you don't step up to drink, sticking your head in the tank upside down is just as bad because now you're drowning them in it. So the thing is you can't do that. So that's why I say, you know what? I'll tell you how to do this. It's up to you to take the action.
Yeah. So. I think I've seen maybe just some interesting cases of people. I think they shut their brains off when things get too hard and shut off the decision-making part. And they go into I think those mirror neurons are more impactful, good and bad, than we realize, because people will act like herds in the worst way sometimes.
Oh, I agree. But they will know when they're thirsty and they'll go drink.
This is true. You know what? And people put on a good act sometime. I know I do.
I don't. I am this way personally, and I'm this way tomorrow in an hour.
I'm learning this.
5 years. It'll come. It's just one of those things
when
you've been through so much. You don't waste anything. So I don't have regrets. I don't have regrets for what has happened to me in my life because I make sure that I do everything I want to do in my day. I stay present in the moment. If an opportunity comes, it's mine, I'll take it. If it's not mine, I won't take it. I'm just glad you took this opportunity to come on here today. I love this conversation, Jade.
I love learning about you. By the way, I was suspended from first grade. I beat the crap out of someone for picking on my brother.
But see, here's the thing is you as a nurse should know that your brain doesn't stop growing till you're 24, 25 is when it's fully developed. And so then you realize, so at those ages, it's trigger reactions that you go through as a child because you don't know.
That one was a choice. You don't mess with my brother, only I do.
Well, the thing is I don't like bullies. I don't justice bullies. And in the third grades, we had back in the day, they don't do it anymore in the schools, but it was like president's exercise program or whatever. You got a certificate.
Peer mediation type thing?
It was like high jump, running, doing different things, push-ups.
Oh.
We used to do that in school to get an award every year. And one year this boy had asthma real bad. He was real thin. And I still remember his name. And these boys were bullying him because he was running slow.
Yeah.
and they called him a name, and I turned around because I just happened to be going by, and I turned around and I punched that boy hard that said it.
Mm-hmm.
So of course they pulled me into the principal's office, and I'm one of those wanted kids. There's nobody there. It's not like you can call my parents. So it's not like you're going to get an equal justice.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the principal said, she says, well, did you hit him? I said, yeah. She said, why? And I said, because they were making fun of this kid because of he can't breathe. I didn't know what asthma was. And she said, did this teacher ask you that? I said, no, she just wanted me to get in trouble for punching this other boy. I said, I'll punch all of them if they tease anybody or bully anybody. I don't care. Send me home.
You know what you were probably doing? You were intrinsically listening to your higher power, because
since 4 years of age.
Me too, because that's a human rights violation to bully someone based on who they are, something that they cannot change about themselves. That is violating a human. And I've done the same. My parents made sure of it, by the way. They instilled the fear.
Where bullying starts?
At home.
Absolutely. And a lot of people never realize that. If I was your older sister and I saw somebody bullying you at home and I don't stop them, I have just given a nonverbal approval for that person to bully you anywhere, any place, anytime.
Can we talk about covert bullying?
My friends are around and I let them bully you. They're going to bully you at school. They're going to bully you in the neighborhood. They're going to bully you. So the thing is they call it sibling rivalry. There's no such thing. It's not rivalry. It's actually bullying, because I want to show I'm tougher than you.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say then? I've been bullied my entire life, by the way.
I know.
In odd ways, from place to place to place, sometimes in outward ways, literally horrible things. Never physical, because I would have beat the crap out of someone, and my mom always taught me sticks and stones. But I always stuck up for the other person getting bullied, because I could see that. I know when I saw people, I was like, okay, I never victimized myself. I didn't feel like the victim to it, because I always said, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Put your hands on me, where it's go time.
Mm-hmm.
But I always knew that going, when do you think those children bullied at home? Because I was too.
Yes. And that's where you lose, because here's the people that are supposed to love you. Here's the people that are supposed to protect you. Here's the people that are supposed to guide you and help you know safety, love.
It's because people are silly little geese. They can jump right back in the pond. Fear is a strong motivator, but inspiring and loving is even stronger.
Well, now that we have the internet, they're doing it hiding behind monitors. And
it's horrible. Biggest bullies.
It is. But the thing is they're not getting rid of that on the platforms. It's still happening, even when it's reported. Well, you need to report it to the police. But it's happening online. We don't know who it is. So the thing is these platforms, social media platforms, are encouraging it on a subliminal level, because it's giving those people that are bullies anonymous power.
Yeah, keyboard warriors. And it's sad, because you look at our mental illness, that's one of those statistics that not only has it not budged, no matter the initiatives that we take, it is growing, and obviously significantly now. But it's unfortunate, because we have not yet learned how to identify. Like, my parents always taught me, they put their hands on you, you pop them.
I said the same thing.
Yep. Don't start a fight, always finish one. Obviously, you turn 18, the rules change.
Yes.
But now, do they? Because when you're being gaslighted, and when people make someone question their own reality, and when they become very good at it, or when they're abusing their power.
Well, they're doing more than that. They are actually profiling you and your weaknesses, and then convince you that what you think is wrong.
Because they're in fear.
There's a word for that. There's a clinical word.
Gaslighting.
For a narcissist.
Oh, absolutely. I think our society conditions people to be narcissists.
I think it creates a lot of them, with allowing them to get away with what they do. And that's as far as like when stalking started to become a real big thing.
Yes.
When the thing
we don't know how to, because people don't know how to put a law on something if it's not a physical thing. And I'm like, when are we gonna decide that we need to maybe let if you don't know how to do it, then maybe bring in people who do. We can identify it. I'm happy to do it. I hate politics. I'll go into it.
And the thing is I hate politics too, but I'm not going to allow somebody to destroy my country. My
Mhm.
family
Oh,
has
yeah.
fought. My family has
Mhm.
fought for the military,
Same.
for this
Do you know?
country, even when they
Yes.
didn't have a choice.
So you have that bone to pick like I do, because I'm
I
looking, I'm like,
absolutely do.
what a shame it is that we sit here and we do abuse our freedoms. The freedoms, my mother gave those freedoms up, and she served 4 tours overseas in war. The first time, a year and a half, she was gone.
My dad was crazy. My dad served in Korea.
Wow.
Then he was sent to Vietnam.
Oh.
And then he volunteered to do a second term in Vietnam. Okay, that's how whacked out he was.
See?
And the fact is that
Now people
I
fear
think he did
nothing.
it for himself at that point because it helped him. He got caught up in drugs and alcohol the first time around, not necessarily in Korea because it wasn't like that. I guess it was, but it wasn't for where he was.
Yeah.
And then the trip to Vietnam, things were different. All of a sudden it was drugs, rock and roll, and guns fighting. So the fact was, and then he did another tour of it because he was an alcoholic. He did
And if
get
we,
exposed to Agent Orange. I mean, the fact is that, the government has been exposing military people to things and using them as guinea pigs without their knowledge. And this has been going on for a long time. But a lot of military, I think it was back in 2002, don't quote me on the year, but some soldiers filed a lawsuit saying that it was unconstitutional to use them as guinea pigs on these antibody, these injections, these different things that they were trying to try out, like they had been using on blacks, like they were using on Native Americans previously. And so
oh my
they
goodness,
won
right?
the soldiers won the court case. And so if it's not an approved antidote or vaccine, they don't have to take it. And people don't realize that nowadays. And,
Yeah.
you
You
know,
know,
I'm
it's
not
really
an
sad.
anti-vacciner.
You're bringing up something so important. I think it should be talked about. And I was always like, I can't even talk about it because there's a 5th grade literacy level in the US, but that's because people choose to not be critical consumers. And you are right, because I'm so sick of being shamed into not questioning things, because no, that doesn't mean cause social chaos. It doesn't mean cause social disruption. If you think there's a problem, what's your solution? What's your answer to that? Because I'm not an anti-vaxxer either, but I was assigned to that side of a debate for school, and I was like, good job, Jade. Way to go. The Tuskegee syphilis experiment. 40 years.
Yes.
40 years.
I mean, they were injecting blacks down in like Mississippi, Alabama with tuberculosis.
They were doing
to see if
spinal
they could come up
taps.
with a cure.
Yeah,
And
they were doing
I think
spinal
it's
taps.
Emma's Boys. I think they did a TV show. So they did it to the Native Americans. Also, they've done it to poor
They've
people.
taken the, what's her name? It was an African American woman who's basically her reproductive cells they used for research. For the family lineages of this family lived in poverty, horrible poverty. Meanwhile, they're capitalizing on this scientific advancement. All I'm saying is that we should always question, just because we have advanced, well, we know better now. 40 years the Public Health Administration funded that. Yeah. Sometimes even good people make bad decisions given fear. All I do know is that no, we should always consider other people too.
But see, it unfortunately in this country, it's all about the dollar. And they don't see the humanity first. They don't understand that they're dealing with human beings. They see them as test subjects.
But you see what's happening now is our antibiotics don't work because we're becoming resistant to those.
They've been abused.
We're too diverse. Our population has evolved and mutated. That's why epigenetics is a thing. And that's why we should be careful with vaccinations, because you can't just give one vaccination to an entire diverse population. It's not about the vaccines. They're genius. They are genius science. Yes. They are not anything malicious or malevolent, but the body it's going into.
Correct.
We don't know.
So I love this conversation.
I know. I'm way off topic.
I wish we could go further, but I'm all about righting injustices. That's what I'm about.
Yeah.
So with that, Jade, I just wanted to thank you so much for being here today. Hang on just a minute. Don't go anywhere. It takes a special kind of individual to dream their thoughts and ideas and turn it into a reality. Jade has done that. She stepped past her fears, stayed her course, had the courage to follow through to the end. Yes, Jade, you've championed yourself. Now we know who you've become. Thank you for sharing your ideas, your thoughts, and your dreams with us today. It has been my pleasure to have you here. And I just want to thank you for being so open minded in every area and all the questions. Thank you so much.